After 6 years of designing and building, delays and progress, the dream was a reality. Concorde nosed slowly out towards the starting point of her flying career. This was it.
It's been over 20 years since Concorde took its last flight, and ever since then we've been kind of lacking. Our fastest commercial planes today only go 42% of Concorde's top speed, and one of those is the A380, which isn't even being manufactured by Airbus anymore, but I'll talk about why that is in a separate video some other time. But today I want to focus on the history of commercial supersonic travel. See, we were first able to reach supersonic speeds in 1947 with the help of the Bell X-1, flown by this guy, Chuck Yeager. But where it really starts to get interesting was the late 60s.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
This is when we started seeing actual hints that supersonic was going to become commercial, with Soviet, American and Anglo-French ventures all fighting to become the first to do so. Until 1969, in which the first supersonic flight happened. That's right, you know the one. Concorde-ski. That's right, the Soviet-made Concorde-ski, or to give it its proper name, the Tupolev 144, was the first commercial supersonic plane to take flight, having taken its maiden flight in 1968 and its first supersonic flight in 1969, beating the Concorde on both occasions. But the real question is, how did the Soviets manage to beat out the British and French? It was well known at the time that the Soviets had more archaic technologies compared to the two. So, how did they do it? Theft. The answer is theft. Soviet spies during the development of both planes were able to steal 90 no, that can't be right. Oh my gosh, I actually saw 9. Wow, okay. That's right, Soviet spies managed to get away with over 90,000 technical documents during the time for Concorde and other aircraft, allowing them to catch up to the French. But despite all this, it was obvious that the Soviet venture was bound to fail. Weighing over 40,000 pounds more than the Concorde, and with its more primitive engines, meant that the plane was extremely limited in its range. But 1973 is where it really fell apart for the 144. During the 1973 Paris Air Show, crowds gathered around to see both the Concorde and 144. However, despite Concorde flying majestically high above the crowds, the Tupolev 144 would tear itself apart in miraculous fashion. After this, the Tupolev never flew outside the Soviet Union and took its final flight in June of 1999. What? No. That's right, the Tupolev 144 somehow managed to outlive the Soviet Union. Now, it wasn't exactly the most glorious death, as Aeroflot would often choose to only take passengers on one route with Concorde-ski, and wouldn't even fill up half the cabin, despite there being demand for it. But let's talk about Concorde. Due to its steep prices, you could only really take Concorde if you really needed to, meaning it was typically filled by businessmen with important meetings to attend. Concorde could fly from Heathrow to JFK in less than 3 hours, so that meant if you were suddenly changed onto anything else, be that a 747 or an A380, it would more than double your journey time, meaning you'd be 5 hours late to that important meeting you had in London. So that meant that there had to be a Concorde ready at New York's JFK airport, sitting there in the hangar, not making a single penny, just in case. But of course there were more concerns that held back the Concorde and supersonic travel in general. But if I went through all of them in that much detail, I think we'd be here all day. So let me quickly go through some of them. 1. Going supersonic of course takes up a lot of fuel, burning over 25,000 litres of fuel per hour. And this would be made worse by the 1973 oil crisis. 2. The crash of Air France 4590 in the year 2000. Of course a headline covering crash of an iconic plane would have an effect on its demand for tickets. And if you want to learn more about this crash, I'd recommend watching the Mentor pilot video about it. Not even mentioning 9/11, which had happened a year after and would bring down the demand of the entire aviation industry. 3. Its design was quite old. Even in its final years it still required a flight engineer, a role which had been steadily phased out for quite a while by this time. 4. That noise, the sonic boom, which meant that the FAA would restrict supersonic travel to exclusively over the ocean, which meant no Europe to Asia lines or no American east to west coast routes. But here's the thing, this might all change in the future with the development of the X-59, but that's a story for the next video, so subscribe so you don't miss it.
With 12 tons of test equipment on board, Andrei Turka took Concorde up to 10,000 feet. She was almost ticking over at less than 300 miles an hour. Nose still in the croup position, undercarriage down. The less for the pilot to do, the better.